All right, so let's talk about layers. Layers are really going to be at the heart of pretty much everything that you do in Photoshop. And the nerve center for layers is over here on the right-hand side of your interface in the Layers palette. And the Layers palette has a series of little buttons down here below, which we'll be using. It has some controls up here in this options area. And it also has this little teeny flyout menu that's hiding up in the upper right-hand corner of the palette that has a whole bunch of options over here. So we'll be using all of those as we get into working with layers. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm getting tired of looking at this checkerboard background. I'm going to go ahead and add what's called a solid fill layer, solid color layer. And so I go down to those little teeny buttons at the bottom of the interface, and there's one that's a half black, half white circle. I click and hold that down, and I pick solid color out of the flyout menu there. Solid color. Our good old trusty color picker comes up, and I'm just going to pick something random there and say OK. And so now I have a whole screen that's filled with red. Well, if I go over here to my layers palette and look at it for a second, I'll notice that I've got the new color fill layer. It's blue, which means it's the active layer. And then I have my old layer here, which is layer 1. So in order to get this to work right, all I have to do is click and drag this layer down to the bottom of the stack. And my layer 1 is over the top of that. Now layer 1 is over the top of it because it's transparent. Now if we had started our document with white, we'd be out of luck, because we'd have this big white blob over it. So that's why we always want to start our documents with transparency. So now we have this, and you can do several things with these layers just already. You can turn a layer on and off with the eyeball. You can easily switch the layers in the stack. You can change the opacity of a layer, making it more or less transparent. Fade it in and out. Now, if we go back to the color fill layer, just because we arbitrarily picked that color at the beginning doesn't mean that we're stuck with it. This is the nice thing about layers, is that they're much more flexible. So I'll go here and double click on the color swatch part, the thumbnail there, and it brings the color picker back up. And so I can go through and pick whatever color I want. If I want to pick a solid white or a solid black, I usually go here to only web colors. So it turns this into some stair steps, and so it makes it a lot easier to pick a solid white or a solid black. Anywhere down here will be solid white or solid black. Whereas if I leave this off, it's easy to get almost white and almost black. So just so you know. But I'm going to cancel out of that. I'm going to stick with that red color because it was just so lovely. Well, that was so much fun. We should continue and make another layer. So how do we do that? Well, there are several ways you can do it. I'll show you 3 different ways to do it. One is to go down here to this, and this is the one that I tend to use. It's the little icon next to the trash can. And just click on that, and you get a new layer, and it's called layer 2 right here. Another way you can do that is to go up here to the flyout menu and choose new layer. And yet another way you could do that is go up here to the layer menu and choose new layer from that menu. And the shortcut is Shift Command N if you're interested. But I just did it down here just by clicking on this icon. So I have a separate layer. Well, now I'm going to use my color picking abilities that I developed in the last video. Come up here, pick a color, get the good old-fashioned brush tool, and I'm just going to start coloring. So you can notice right now that as I color over this, I'm coloring on top of my black line. But since that color is on its own layer, all I have to do is take that layer and drag it into the middle of the stack there, and now it's on top of the red, but behind the black line. So as I go in here, I'm coloring away. and it's behind the black but on top of the red. So now if I want to erase, the eraser will only affect what's on that layer. So if I go ahead and erase through this layer, it's only going to erase the green and not the black or the red. So I could go out here and very easily just clean up my green layer, because I'm not erasing the black line here. I don't have to worry about that. So by the time we're done, this will look nice and clean. But if I turn off the black layer, you can see it's fairly raggedy underneath there, but because the black is on top of it, it doesn't have to be nice and perfect that way. So I'll add another layer. And I can also name my layers, which, to be honest, I don't do right away. I usually wait to do that, but heck, I'll show you. Call that eye color. And I'll pick, let's say, I don't know, maybe almost a white here. And then I can, oops, using the brush tool, just lay that color in there. And because it's on top of the green, it's on top of the green, and because it's behind the black, it's, you guessed it, behind the black. And then I can just kind of clean that up. And I'll do one more here. I'll call this hair color. And let's go and do that. Okay. All right. So now one thing you'll notice about layers is that if we use the move tool on a layer, it'll only move what's on that layer. I'll undo that. Edit, undo, move. Okay. And if I go in the green layer, it's the same thing. Edit, undo, move. Command Z, by the way, is of course your one-step undo. So what happens if we want to move this whole thing together as a unit? Well, I'll show you one other nice feature of the layers palette, and it's called layer folder or layer groups. So go down here and create a new group. It looks like a folder. It's the icon down here. Group 1. I'll call this face. I'll drag it to the top of the stack. And I'm just going to drag and drop each layer into the folder. So now I have a layer group that I can open and close. If I want, I can turn the whole thing on and off. So everything that's in that group is turned on and off. And then when I click on the move tool, it will move the entire group as one unit. So there you have an introduction to some of the first really basic elements of layers.